So you may get 20 from early position with 6-3 off.
Right. I mean, I have 400 behind, so if he makes it 75. So there's no way you can pull that, right?
No, I call as well.
Yeah, so I have to call because I'm no bitch. Flop comes 10, 3, 6, 2 diamonds.
Okay.
He bets 125, so I ripped it in.
Listening to my buddy Aaron's cooler that he put out on someone in the 2-5 game before this game starts, the classic raise an early position with 6-3 offsuit. Fun story, that 2-5 player that he's coolered is going to skip the 5-5 level and move up to 5-5-10 later in the day, and we're pretty sure it's because he wants revenge for this hand history. On to today's game, it's going to take a little bit of time for us to get started, and we're 4-handed at the very beginning. This happens from time to time, but I'm sure we'll fill up in due course. I wailed about it in the last episode, so I'm going to be focused on playing as well as possible today, a little tighter pre-flop and a little more aggressive post-flop. I actually did a 2-minute video where I rambled about this exact topic, but I'm going to spare you guys from having to listen to it. Let's get into our first hand of the day. I pick up ace-5 of clubs on the button. I raise it on up to $35. The big blind is an unknown player. He makes the call. Heads up to the flop we go. It is queen 6-3 with 2 clubs. He checks me and I decide to see bet here for $40. My opponent isn't going anywhere just yet. He makes the call. To the turn, it's the deuce of hearts. 2 flush draws on board now, but lots and lots of equity for me, so I bet again for $125. You can probably overbet this spot, but I think the size will likely achieve the same desired outcome. Not this time though, as my opponent makes the call. The river is the king of hearts. I block a lot of folds and I don't have a heart in my hand. So when he checks to me, I just check it back. He turns over queen 10 of spades. I don't think that one was getting through, but I guess we'll never know.
Wait, is that
Face down, Gary. Face down.
Really accurate.
It's terrible. You don't have to laugh at it. Whoa! I just want to put it on the vlog, that's all.
It is mandatory to make this joke whenever you're last to act and fold a blackjack double down hand in the process. Trust me guys, it will increase your win rate by a few big blinds. Speaking of things that increase my win rate, the straddle is now on, and a few hands later I pick up ace-10 offsuit in the cutoff and raise it on up to $50. The straddle is the only player to make the call. We go heads up to queen 6-5 with 2 diamonds. I've got backdoor galore, as we say back home, so I of course throw out a c-bet of $65. My opponent makes the call, and as he does, he calls for a diamond. The turn is in fact the 4 of diamonds. Kind of dicey because I'd planned on blasting it off if a diamond came, but maybe he really needed that diamond. Still, I fire out again on the turn here for $190, and my opponent makes the call. To the river, hoping to make the nut flush, but instead it's an offsuit 10 to give me second pair. My opponent checks to me and my hand is too strong to bluff now, so I check it on back and he turns over deuce 3 offsuit for a turned straight. Good thing I made my pair on the river because I was definitely going to blast off, and I doubt he was folding that. A fair few pots are going against me early today, down about $600 after this hand, but it's still early. I'm playing as well as I can. The straddle is on. I'm definitely not stressing. All right, a little card dead so far today, but after taking a quick break, I'm back in my seat now and pick up a very playable pair of 9s. I raise it on up to $50. The button is my new friend TJ from Boston. He plays a tight, aggressive style pre-flop, and here he puts in the raise to $150. He folds back round to me, and we're only $1,500 effective here because of the cap. I decided that I'd shove some really low pocket pairs, the ones that don't have playability post-flop, but pocket 9s very much does, so I just make the call. Hoping for some low cards on the flop, but it comes down Jack 10-5 rainbow. I check and my opponent throws out a hefty c-bet for $240. Again, I just have to let my hand go. Can't really get anything going so far today, but we're going to go 1 pair higher here with these pocket 10s in the big blind a few minutes later. The cutoff is raised to $50, which is brought along the button and the middle blind, and I put in a very healthy squeeze to $320. Action back on the cutoff. He's a good, solid pro, a little on the tight side, so when he moves all in for $1,500, I'm a little concerned. Still, I think he can do this with some worse hands like ace-king and pocket 9s, maybe even ace-5 suited as well, so I just sigh and call it off. I ask if he wants to go once or twice. We agree to run it twice, and he tells me that he's got pocket kings. Yucky to run into the overpair, but we're going to go twice here. And this dude runs terrible versus me, so you just never know. No help on that first run out, but a set on the flop in the second run out for me to give me my money back and chop up some of the shrapnel in the middle as well. Very happy not to be stacked there, and definitely not complaining anymore about not running the best today, as that could have been a whole lot worse for me there. Okay, 10 minutes later, I'm in the straddle with an ace and a queen of the unsuited variety. It folds all the way around to the big blind, who limps in. I, of course, put in the raise. I make it $90 to go, and then he limp raises me to $340. He'll have a strong range here, so I don't love it at all, but still, I'm not folding my hand. I make the call. We go heads up to the flop, which is 9-4-3 with 2 diamonds. I am planning to just fold, given how strong my opponent's range is here, even with the backdoor flush draw, but he only bets out for $125. Really small size. And I decide that I have to call versus this small size. To the turn, it is a queen. I don't know if that is going to help or hinder me here. My opponent now checks, and I put him firmly on one hand, pocket jacks. I definitely want to get max value versus what I believe to be pocket jacks, so I bet out here for $250. He immediately folds his hand face up. He's got ace king. He says it's the 7th time that he's had it today, and he's lost every single time with that. A very nice turn card for me there. The tides are now starting to turn a little after these last couple of hands. Still stuck for the day, but only down around $1,200 or so. One double up away from getting back into Profitville. All right, that last ace queen went pretty well for us. Let's hope this one does as well. I'm in the hijack and raise to $50. A pro in the game is in the small blind and puts in the 3-bet to $220. I, of course, make the call. We're going heads up to the flop, which is queen high with 1 club. Really good start here, and my opponent decides to c-bet for $175. Nothing else I can do here. I, of course, make the call. To the turn, it is a king, but it's the king of clubs to give me the nut flush draw. My opponent bets again, this time for $450. Really not loving this spot out of nowhere, but I, of course, make the call. To the river, it is the jack of clubs. Absolute nutter butters for me. And after a few seconds, my opponent checks. This is a little bit anticlimactic because I don't think this player is ever check calling. I'm trying to work out what my bluffs would be in this spot, and after a few seconds, I decide it doesn't matter. I just move all in, and as expected, he just snap folds. A really, really nice run out for me there, so I definitely can't complain, but it would have been a little sweeter if my opponent called. All right, a few hands later, I'm in the middle blind with queen 9 of diamonds. There's been a raise to $50 and a couple of calls, and I come along as well. The straddle makes the call too. We go 5 ways to the flop, which is 10-7-4 with 2 diamonds. The hijack is going to take a stab here for $130 on the flop, and I am the only player to make the call. To the turn, it is an offsuit 8. Absolute monster draw for me here, and when my opponent bets again for $200, I know he's not going to bet a 1-pair hand on a board as connected as this, so I probably don't have any fold equity with a raise. I decide to just call and try and get there. To the river, it is the 3 of diamonds. Yet another ping for me on the river. And given how strong I think his range is on the turn, I think this is a very, very clear lead out for me. But if I lead out, then it can't go check, check. And if it can't go check, check, then I can't do this.
You got it. I just have a queen high flush. You did that to me the other day.
I figured you were a diamond draw anyway.
This is a buddy of mine who did this to me the other day. You guys might remember he told me to quote unquote chop these nuts. But honestly, he's having a bit of a rough day today, so maybe this is just a little bit mean for me in hindsight. But we're back in black for the day, baby. All right, about an hour or so later, I'm in the straddle with 7-6 offsuit. There's been a limp from early position, a raise to $50, 2 players have called, and I'm getting a really good price here. I expect the limper to come along as well, so I go ahead and make the call. The limper does also make the call. We go 4 ways to the flop, which is 5-3 deuce with 2 clubs. I've got a gut shot to the nuts, and this is a decent board for my range, so I decide to get a little funky here and lead out for $75. I'm going to get a call from the hijack and the button. 3 ways to the turn is the queen of clubs. I'm going to lead out with a lot of flush draws on the flop here, and I have a club in my hand, so I decide to barrel again, this time for $250. In hindsight, I think this is really ambitious, especially versus 2 players. A hand like King Jack with a club or Ace 10 with a club would be much better here. The button is going to make the call. He's not a believer of me. The other player has folded, so we're heads up to the river, which is a board pairing deuce. I decide to fire one more time, see if I can make a hand like 8s or 9s with a club fold. I bet out for $500 and I get snap called. I tell him he's got it, and thankfully he's nice enough to turn over his hand. He doesn't make me show this abomination bluff of mine. Bit of a blunder there on the turn in the river. I'm a little bit annoyed with myself for this one, so I decide to take a break for 10 minutes, stretch my legs, step away from the table. All right, 10-minute break and then back into my seat, and 40 minutes after sitting down again, I am all in. We're going to skip the pre-flop part here. My opponent has 4-bet jam for $800 pre-flop with Ace King. I've called it off with pocket 9s. We're going twice here. Over to you, dealer.
Got backdoors.
You never ever win the second one if you get rivered in the first one. That is just a fact of life. $825 sent over to my opponent and now down $1,350 for the day. But I ain't sweating it. We're one double up away from being back in profit. Next up, I'm in the cutoff with ace-3 suited. No straddle this hand, so I raise it to $35. TJ from Boston is on the button. He has played very aggressively versus me on the vlog in the past, and he makes it $115 to go. A loose non-pro then cold calls out the small blind. I know TJ is aggressive, and I have full equity versus the small blind's range here, so I decide to put in the 4-bet to $380. TJ is going to make the call, as is the non-pro. We're going 3 ways to the flop, which is Queen Jack 7 with no spades. I decide to wave the white flag here. I check it on over to the button, who is going to take a stab. The small blind folds. I, of course, fold as well. TJ is kind enough to show us that he had pocket kings. Now, you've got to have some bluffs in there with your value 4-bet so that when you 4-bet with aces, your opponent can't just always fold. I actually pick up pocket aces in the very next hand. I raise an early position. TJ 3-bets me again, and when I put in the 4-bet, he snap folds. See? Balance. 2 4-bet pots in a row versus TJ. How about we play a third one? I'm in the small blind here with pocket 8s. The button is raised to $50. I have put 3-bet to $200, and TJ then cold 4-bets to $475. We're about $2,500 effective here, and I know that he's aggressive, so he's going to cold 4-bet correctly, so I go ahead and make the call. We go heads up to the flop, which is 7-6-5 with 2 spades. Pretty good start here without flopping a set. I checked my opponent, and he c-bets here for $475. At this point, I just want to see all the cards, so I just move all in. And of course, he snaps me off. This is not ideal. We're running it twice versus pocket kings for this pot worth $5,000. Dealer, I need some help.
Two times.
Two turns in the
Two turns.
All right.
Yeah, 2 boards.
Yep. Turn. River. Scazzy.
Turn.
Now burning river.
All right, thank you.
Nice time. Chop. I'm kind of lucky, after I win the first one.
Guys, what'd you have?
All right, next up, I am in middle position with pocket 9s. Under the gun is a limp happy non-pro who has limped in for $20. A local reg is next to act and makes it $125. And I am next to act yet again and make the call. It falls back round to the limper, who also calls. 3 ways to the flop. It is Jack 9-7 rainbow. Dream spot for me here. The original raiser bets out for $125, and I decide to just call to keep the limper in. And sure enough, he does make the call as well. 3 ways to the turn here, which is a beautiful 7. What a great turn card this is for me here to give me a full house. The aggressor is going to keep betting. He fires out again for $300. Once again, I just call. Unfortunately, the limper doesn't have a 7. He just lets his hand go. To the river, it is a king. If he's got pocket kings, then so be it. He bets again for $500. He's got about $400 behind, so after a few seconds, I of course move all in for the last of it. He pukes in his mouth, says that he can't fold, and calls it off. I show him the bad news, and this huge pot is being pushed my way. A great flop and an even better turn card, and this now puts me into profit for the first time in a long time today. It's been a hell of a grind, but we are not stopping just because we're in profit. We're going to keep going and see if we can have a great day here. Next up, I'm under the gun with ace-10 of clubs and raise it on up to $50. I get 3 calls from the cutoff, the button, and the small blind. We go 4 ways to the flop, which is ace-8-6 with 2 hearts. I see bet here for $150, hashtag soft table, and I get called by the cutoff and the button. 3 ways to the turn, which is a 4, and I bet again for $275, hashtag really soft table. This time I'm going to get called by only the cutoff. To the river, it is the king of hearts. That front door flush comes in, and I check to the cutoff, who takes a few seconds before firing out for $400. Really annoying river. This player is very wide, so he can have all the flushes here, but of course he can find plenty of bluffs as well. I think for a long time before just sighing and making the call. He turns over his hand. He's got, I'm not going to tell you. Instead, let's do a secret giveaway for $100. Anyone who can guess his exact hole cards, suits and all, will win $100. This is a wee thank you to you guys that watch my vlogs regularly. I'm not going to advertise this on Twitter or YouTube or put it in the title. This is just for y'all that have made it this far. Big thank you to everyone that tunes in and watches the vlogs. The only condition I've got is you must be subbed to the channel. So take a guess in the comments and I'll pick the closest guesser to win $100. Okay, guys, don't read too much into the results tracker and try and work out if I won or lost the last hand. It actually takes an hour before the next hand of note, and given the straddle is on, there are a lot of bloated pots that are going multi-way. Very swingy day so far. In this next hand, I'm in the big blind with 9-7 offsuit. There have been 3 limps before it gets to me, and I, of course, check. We go 4 ways to the flop, which is Queen 7-5 rainbow. I decide to take a stab here, get a bit of value and a bit of protection from my hand at the same time. Under the gun makes the call, as does the big blind. We go 3 ways to the turn. Absolute bink, it is another 7. I fire out again, this time sizing up to $175. Under the gun is going to make the call. The other player folds. We go heads up to the river, which is an offsuit 3. Nothing changes. And I fire out once more, trying to get maximum value from a queen. I bet $490. I get snap called. I turn my hand over, and he turns over King 7 of diamonds. This pot has escalated quickly because I was trying to get max value, and I've ended up value cutting myself. I thought it was a ping on the turn, and I guess it was, but just not for me. This hand is going to send me back into red for the day. I was thinking about leaving, but I guess not now. All right, trying to finish the day strong and looking like I might do so when I pick up ace-king in the big blind. The button is raised to $60. I make it $240 to go. The straddle then cold calls this 3-bet, and the button gets out the way. We're going heads up to the flop, which is Jack, Jack, deuce with 2 spades. I still decide to c-bet my hand here. I bet $180, and my opponent makes the call. The turn is an offsuit deuce, and I decide my hand is too strong to bluff now. I check it on over to my opponent, and he bets out for $300. I'm thinking about making the call. He's going to have some floats in his range here, but lots and lots of middle pairs. So after a few seconds, I just fold. He tells me later that he had pocket queens. Not sure if I believe him, but that doesn't matter because 2 minutes later, I pick up ace-king offsuit again. This time I'm in the $40 straddle, and the $80 straddle is on as well. What a great game we've got here today. The $20 straddle raises to $200. I put in the re-raise to $600. And then the $20 straddle moves all in for $1,200. I, of course, call it off.
Would you like to go once or twice, sir? It's up to you.
It's twice.
2 times. Wait. What do you have?
I'm a pair.
Of?
Yeah.
Wait, one second.
I'm a pair?
I'm going to talk to this young man. What do you have? A pair of? I've called you. You don't know what I'm saying?
Don't worry about what they're doing.
We won 2 times. That's me. All right, let's go. One time. Spade! Oh, look at that.
I won the first board with ease, should have just ran it once, couldn't quite manage to get there on the second one. I think a chop is fair here with these 2 hands. I did grind it out for another hour after this hand before just sighing and tapping the table at around midnight. Was very tired, very fun day overall, but I finished down a measly $512. It's all good, it's no big deal. We're supposed to have losing days sometimes, but you guys know me, I hate having losing days, however small they are. I actually speak about this in detail in the outro, but as you can see, I have misclicked put the camera into slow motion. And what's worse, it's going to take me a few days of doing clips like this in the casino before I realize. So be sure you subscribe to the channel so you can see my slow motion intro in the next vlog. Down $512 for the day. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you as ever to those that have tuned in. Until next time, take it easy.